An incredibly moving film, and I must congratulate you on the cinematography and the work that you put in, because it's a visual feast to see the many landscapes of India, and I can
Thank
only
you, Matt.
imagine the work that you put in. And I know that you've worked on in the industry before this film in India. Had you worked on a documentary, that kind of content prior to this? And was this, I assume, a uniquely demanding project? You said that you had over 1,800 hours of footage to start off with.
Approximately, yes, that's right.
Can you expand on that a little?
So I have worked in non-fiction television or factual television before with a couple of broadcasters here in India, but this is my first feature-length documentary. Yes, that's right. And it was, as you mentioned correctly, an extremely challenging project for all of us who were a part of the team. Specifically, yes, giving the sheer volume of the footage that we had, because the Walk of Hope by itself was, I think, for a year and a half, for 474 days, they walked from Kanyakumari to Kashmir. And each day there was an archival camera team which was rolling for almost 2 hours a day. And they had about 2 to 3 cameras in total. So stitching that together was a bit difficult, definitely. But I think mainly what we set out to do was to find the story of what actually happened.
Mm. And while you were working, were you walking on? Were you doing the walk as well as directing the walk? I mean, how do you maintain that combination of participating in this incredible walk whilst also working as a filmmaker at the same time?
So when I heard about this walk, I think it was in early 2014 when Shri M announced that he's going to be walking from from the length of the country. And I said that, I have to contribute in some way to this movement, in whatever way I can. So the first thing that came was, I remember we had a meeting and I said that I'd like to do a documentary on this film, on this movement. And we really didn't know where it was going to go, to be very honest with you, Matthew. It was just me and a couple of friends with a few cameras on the first day. And it was this gargantuan movement that set off with almost 3,000 people. We didn't know how to cover it. We didn't know how to film it. We just immersed ourselves into the walk. And gradually, there was a certain evolution process for even the walk and us as filmmakers together. If you see in the start, the walk kind of found its footing gradually. Similarly, while we also were immersed in the whole logistical, I wouldn't say nightmare, but it was definitely difficult in terms of managing all the logistics while they walked for about 20 kilometers each day. What was very difficult was that you had only one chance to get the shot. And I don't know if anybody was there in the walk over there, or has seen or been a part of the walk. Shri M and the walkers walked really fast. They used to walk really, really fast. And we used to set up our shots and cameras, and we had just one take to do it because you can't keep getting it again and again. I think that was a challenge which we had to overcome as filmmakers. And also to kind of start looking for the story in terms of what is it that we want to say. And, Matthew, I think this film was a journey for us as filmmakers. I say filmmakers because I consider the whole team who's worked with me on this as a part of this journey. And it was a big journey for us as filmmakers as well, simultaneously. After we finished filming the entire Walk of Hope, we were quite puzzled as to how do we put this whole thing together. Because if you see the footage in its raw form, it's mainly a lot of people just walking from left to right, going from one place to the other. So how do you tell the story of what actually happened,
Mm.
right, without it just being a visual, let's say, a chronicle,
Yeah.
right?
What would you
So
say emerged then in that approach to those specific kind of logistical and technical things in terms of maintaining battery charges for the cameras or protecting it, in the
it
humidity
was
soon?
Oh, it was very difficult. It was mainly just a couple of few camera persons who were a part of the walk also, and us as a production team who were collaborating with them. So the ones who were a part of the walk, they used to, start with the walk at 4 in the morning. They were kind of in a cycle. They were doing the archiving and the cataloging of the whole walk. A beautiful team, Amal, Nikhil, and Sijo, three of them, running around with their cameras. And we used to step in as the production unit. We stepped in at each state. There were about 11 states. We stepped in at each state where the geographical location changed visually, so that we could capture that. The change could be visually shown on camera. So logistically, in terms of the batteries and camera, I think it was very difficult in the first few months to understand how do we actually do this, because the walkers would start at 4:35 in the morning, and they would walk till about 8:30, stop and all somewhere there was a designated spot for breakfast, and then again continue till about 12:31, till when they reached the closest destination for the day. And then they would wind up, rest for a couple of hours. And there was an evening program, usually in the district or in the locality, gathering all the villagers or gathering all the people, the townsfolk, and addressing them, where Shri M used to address daily for 474 days. So it was a cycle for us which developed as the walk went on. As I said, the first few months were very difficult because we had to be up 2 hours before them. And we had to stay on 2 hours after them. Because, once you're done for the day, you need to back up your cards, you need to charge your cameras, your batteries, you need to, make sure that the footage is logged in, safe. And then next morning, again, wake up before they wake up so that you can get them while they get out of that particular location or step out of that location. So it was definitely physically demanding, but I think there was a beautiful energy in the Walk of Hope by itself, which kind of, where we just let ourselves into it. And I can't describe it. I think the film is the best description of that. It was us being a part of the walk. So I think that whole idea of walking with M, at least for me, because it's a very reflective title, at least for me, was literally being a part of the walk with them, a walk with him specifically, and trying to show you the perspective of what we saw.
Yes, and you mentioned chronicling this experience.
Oh, that was
before I interrupted you. So I was just curious to know, in the course of filming this, when chronicling, how much of this was a film about Shri M, and how much of it became a film about the people and the walk itself and the experiences that you had? It seems to straddle that line of focusing on Shri M as the lead character in a sense, and also at the same time on the power of the walk, the people, the effect it grew to have. Now, how did that chronicling emerge in your experience?
It was an interesting process that we did just after the walk, when we started scanning all the footage that we had, the multiple cameras, everything. We started seeing it and we said, where's the story? What is the story that we want to say? And I had a beautiful team of researchers from different backgrounds, journalistic backgrounds, young, enthusiastic editors who were there with me on this project. So there were about 6 of us who started actually logging the footage. I'll be very honest with you, when we saw the footage for the first time, we were not sure as to how to compile this together. But there was one time, Matthew, when we started scanning and logging this entire walk. So we had 6 different screens playing each day of the walk while we logged everything. And that was a moment for me when I discovered what actually happened. Because when we were a part of the walk, we were so immersed in the day-to-day activities, capturing, okay, what's happening today? Let's follow this guy. Let's follow this. But when we saw it from, I would say, like a macrocosmic perspective, when we saw it playing out differently on 6 different screens, that was when it struck all of us together, who were working on the film, that I don't think something like this has ever occurred at least in the recent modern history of India. When we saw the south, when we saw, the central portions of India, when they walked through the villages, and then reaching Delhi, where it was, kind of picked up and, supported by almost all stakeholders over there. That was the time when it dawned to us that this walk was gigantic. This was a gargantuan movement that happened, at least for peace. And then we took a little deep dive and we started finding out what actually happened. Because I think one of the decisions that I had taken early on in the film was to make sure that we tell a linear story. We wanted to tell a linear story. It would have been an easier edit to do if we went non-linear, people recalling their experiences and you can shuffle the footage. But everything that you see is completely linear. So if there is something in Tamil Nadu, what has happened, what you're seeing on the film is Tamil Nadu. It's not taken from anywhere else. So that started, shaping up the structure. And then as we went, deeper, we realized the mission that this gentleman is, when we understood what actually happened, why he took up the walk, and it was that urgent call for peace. If you see, there was this. We found. I don't know if you remember. We found this beautiful archival portion of his. I think in 1993 or 1994 was when he mentions this Sanskrit shloka called Sangachatvam from the Rig Veda, and we started seeing him mentioning this through different courses of time. So in 1994, 2000, and that kind of resonated with us. That here is somebody who believed in this idea since I think the early 90s. I think it's something that he wanted to do since the early 90s. And then we went a step deeper and we found out that he'd taken up two short walks in Bangalore and his hometown Madnapalli, which is in Andhra Pradesh, like a short day walk which he had done, which was, I think, the genesis of the longer national walk that happened. So if you see, I think he believed in this idea from the very start. And as I'd like to say, it's then we came to the part is when you make a sculpture, right? You need to chip off all the stuff that you don't need. So as we started chipping off the stuff that was not important, we started coming down to what we call the spine of the film, which was basically this idea of Manav Ekta mission, what this man undertook. So I don't know if that answered the question, but this was broadly the journey in terms of understanding the scale of the walk and the man's mission, which he undertook at a national scale.
Yes, it's spectacular, really. That level of focus, actually. I mean, we were wondering what your line of reasoning was in terms of breaking all of that material down, images and scenes, to just down to an hour and a half. I suppose what kind of informed that, really, in terms of that time frame, and I suppose you've answered it to an extent in terms of building a spine.
Right.
Can you expand on that?
So again, as we went deeper into the story, as we started seeing what actually happened, because we need to make it from the footage that we have, right? We can't create anything or make something new. So what we started doing was we started doing these research calls with all the key people who walked, and at least those who took an important management role in the walk. Yeah. So we started verifying what actually happened, because I was very sure from the start that I want to do a feature. This could have very well probably translated into a series, but because we had so much material, our first cut was about 11 hours long. From 11 hours, we narrowed it to 9 to 4, and then from 4 to 2.5, and which is the director's cut and extended theatrical. And what you see is the theatrical. So I think when we started doing those calls with all the stakeholders who were a part of the movement in different states or playing different roles in the walk, we started realizing what actually happened. We made like this huge. I'll share a photograph at some point. We made this huge chart where we kind of actually mapped the story of 2014. This is what happened. 2015. This is what happened. 16. When they reached. So we came to know that when they crossed Karnataka going into Maharashtra was the hottest spell. When they crossed Maharashtra, it was this rainy weather that they had to brave through. So we kind of started understanding the narrative by doing these calls, and then of course we figured on early on that talking heads would be the ideal way to tell this story. Getting their insights of those who walked on camera would be a beautiful way to tie this all together, because Shriyam was very clear in the start that my walk is my talk. He had made it very clear that, I've done what I had to do, and this is it. So we felt it would be interesting to have the perspective of those who walked with him, you know, to understand the story. So that was the starting point for the narrative. Then, as we, went a little deeper, we started seeing a subtle story emerge through. I don't know if you noticed, but as soon as they started the walk, they faced a few hiccups on the first day and the second day, and there were these foundational issues. And the first address that he gave was, we need to be together. We need to be peaceful as one unit. And if you see his final speech, which he gave in Kashmir, he mentions a very beautiful book called The Conference of the Birds, or a poem called Conference of the Birds, where he says that, everybody goes out in a search for the truth, but finally they find a mirror where the change is the individual, right? The change has to reflect within the individual. So this microcosmic, macrocosmic idea started emerging as we actually started finding out the narrative, as we started going closer to the narrative. And I think that microcosmic and macrocosmic idea reflects in Shri M's life as well, with the incident that happened to him. And I think that became the line which we said, okay, this is it. And that helped us bring it down to 1.5 hours.
You're so intuitive. You're answering my questions before I'm asking them. Because I was going to say, the film, towards the end, we have the UN Prevention of Genocide, this representative, and he talks about
Mr. Ramadian. That's right.
Wonderful, wonderful guy. He talks about the importance of the walk as a way of preventing genocide.
Right.
And Shri M touches on this in his opening message. When you see what's happening around the world now, the Middle East, what do you feel in terms of the experience that you had on this walk? What do you feel that we could do as individuals, as an audience of this film, just individually, to help to cultivate that within ourselves and with others? That's more of a personal question.
So I'll answer from my personal perspective only. I changed while I made this film. This film was a journey for me to go within and understand this message deeply. Right? If I wouldn't have gone through that transformation, I don't think I would have been able to put it out in film or on with the audiovisual medium, whatever you may call it. So this idea dawned to me that this audiovisual medium can be used in many ways, right? Especially today. So I felt this film is my way of communicating the urgency to understand this message, that at the end of the day, we're all human beings. It's a very basic foundational message that he gives, that we're all human beings, regardless of our exterior differences. So when I understood that, I wanted to communicate it to many people. I don't know if my grandfather was a novelist. He started off as a novelist. He wrote a beautiful novel called Aur Insaan Mar Gaya, which is translated as And Humanity Died. He wrote it after the partition, after he witnessed the horrors of the partition. It's an Urdu novel. And in that novel, he tried to detest people from violence. That was his voice in the novel. And that's always been an inspiration for me. Somebody asked me during the course of the film, where is the conflict? If they're going to resolve everything, right? If they're on a journey to bring people together, where's the conflict? And that stuck with me as a filmmaker. I said, how do I need conflict? What do I do? Then I realized that the answer, this film, is the resolution. So I hope and I pray that even if two people watching this film can understand that message of Shri M, what he did across India, because I think it transcends geographical boundaries, really. And if they can understand this, then my job is done.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I believe that we have time for a little bit of audience participation, if we have any questions from our audience. So let's take it out to anybody who's got anything niggling in their minds, what they'd like to ask Akash, our director. Have we anyone?
Kind of a technical question. You said you had 1800 hours worth material.
roughly,
How
yes.
much did the storage cost you? Like money, but
Good question.
storage.
That's a good question. I don't know if you can see some of our storage setup here and some of our storage setup here. So we had, I think we crossed about, because this was filmed in 2015. So we primarily shot on HD. The 5D camera was a new camera that was just in at that point of time. So we couldn't go up to 4K. However, I'd love to go up to 4K, but the film was primarily filmed in HD, the most of the walk. So we crossed, even with HD footage, we crossed about 100 TB of storage and backup. But I think if this was 4K and done today, we would have probably been in PB, petabyte, if I would translate the same thing today. But I think we're at about 112 TB or something like that. That was the last backup that we did on LTO.
That's too much.
Because we had because we had 22 talking heads, and each of them, speaking for about 2 hours or so. And we filmed that on an extensive film camera called the Red. So that storage data was pretty heavy. Simultaneously, the walk had about 4 to 5 cameras rolling. And in Punjab in 2016, we were one of the first few people to bring in a drone, and we shot in slow motion, and we had like an FS7 camera, which was relatively new camera at that time. So for that time, we were pretty big on storage. If I had to compare that today, we would have, as I said, been at about PB or something like that. So 112 TB is what my last backup was.
Wow. Well, kudos to you, all of you.
I have a cool photo. I'll share it sometime with me with all these hard drives put in front of multiple hard drives in front of me.
Hello, Akash ji. Firstly,
Hi,
congratulations winning the
thank you so much.
and
I
very
think this award is for all of us. I don't think it just belongs to me. This film is for everybody, and so is the award. Really.
and very grateful that you made this documentary, because the message is something that needs to be reached to the world, and currently the times we are living in, I think this is very appropriate. And the film itself, I mean, it's amazing technically. I see that the music
Thank you.
is given to you. So can you talk about the background music that you're amazing actually?
So I actually started off as a music composer in the film industry in India. I started off pretty early, but I do have the background of being a composer. I would have, to be very honest with you, I would have loved to have this film's music done by somebody else. But unfortunately, we were so pressed for time that I had to step in at the last moment, and we had to just put it together and put it out there because the Delhi premiere had been announced in April, and we had to just to be very frank and honest with you. But musically, this film was a challenge for me because I'm generally used to doing feature films where the music is a little bit more pronounced. The scenes have a little bit more structure in terms of musicality and so on. But with the documentary, you need to be very transparent. It was, we wanted to be very transparent, yet communicate that emotion of what he was trying to put out. In some way, bring that balance between the two. That was the starting point for me with the score for this film. It took about 12 days to do the score, primarily recorded inside my bedroom. My wife hates me for that because she had to hear it every night playing on the speakers. But we were pressed for time, and we had about 12 days to wrap up. And the best that we could do, we had a couple of featuring artists, close friend of mine called Pankaj Avasthi, who did one beautiful Kabir bhajan in the middle when they're around UP, when they cross Uttar Pradesh. So we wanted a piece there, and we didn't know what to do. So I went to Pankaj and I asked him that, listen, this is the film, this is the piece, and I left it with him. I said that, do what you have to do. I'm stepping out. And 2 days later, he came back with this beautiful rendition of Jag Borana, which is a very, very beautiful Kabir poem, which says that, look, the world is crazy. Because Shriyam said a very interesting dialogue just before when he's talking to the press. He says that people think I'm crazy, but I think if this is what you call as sanity, then it's better to be insane. So that kind of reflected with us. with that particular part of the music that we had, the song that he sings, the poem that he sings. Apart from that, I think the approach was to have it a little bit more universal. The score, we wanted to keep it a little bit more universal, not particularly confined to a particular geographical region, because the message was so universal. We used a lot of source music, which we got while we recorded on the fly, during the journey. Like, there are portions of some folk singers singing in Kannada just before they enter Maharashtra, and then in Gujarat you have these beautiful, bhajans being sung. So we used that as source music through and through, the best that we could find, with the archivals and everything like that. And the approach was, as I said, to make it as universal, the sound to be as universal and reflect with the message, and as transparently we can reflect it with the message, because we didn't want it to be too overpowering. And I hope it came across that way. So it was a challenging score for me, in those ways. Thank you very much, though.
Once again, I loved your film, of course, and the message was superb. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you so much.
I've got two
Thank you so
questions.
Please.
First one is, I've seen how people can be so sensitive when there is a camera, even from a mobile phone. I can imagine walking with 3 big cameras into a zone where there are tensions. I don't know how you manage to do that. Can you tell us your secrets? That's number one. Number two, there is, you did say that they were walking fast and during fairly difficult weather conditions. But
that's right.
Your film, it didn't come across that, so many people are talking about walking to be fit, blah, blah, blah. That aspect, I didn't pick it up in your film at all. And crossing India by foot needs to be a fantastic physical achievement. So I'm wondering why that was a little bit left out, and if it was on purpose, or maybe I'm just being too nosy. Thank you.
No, I think it's a great question. I'll start with the first one. You said, how do we take the cameras to those areas which were slightly sensitive? And what happens is, when we were with the walk, there was such beautiful energy around with everybody, especially with Shri M, talking to them one-on-one. He would kind of be on the road, having a chai, sitting down, discussing the most complicated topics in the most easy way. That kind of, I think, eased people down. The walk by itself, when it entered these territories and the areas, people kind of got comfortable. Secondly, as he said, right, they walked into that area. They didn't jet through a car. They didn't speed in. So people were not apprehensive. They were, in fact, very welcoming that, oh, somebody's walked this distance and come here. So it was, it kind of eased tensions down. And when they realized that this was truly non-political at its core, especially in a country like India, when they realized that it was truly non-political, they kind of, opened their arms and welcomed all of us. So we saw that happening. Everything that you see is actually what happened in front of us. The most difficult terrain where we filmed, I would say, was the jungle, actually, was when they walked, they had to cross from a state called Kerala going into Karnataka. And unfortunately, we didn't get permission. They didn't get permission to stay in the jungle at the night. So we had to do the whole distance in one go. This was, I think, a 40 to 45 kilometer walk that happened in that one single day. So we started at 3 a.m. and we halted in the middle of the jungle. There was a food truck which came in. We had a meal there. We all rested, and then we walked again, took rest. And I think it was about 4:30 or 5 p.m. when we reached the base camp for the day. That was actually one of the most challenging shoots, strangely, as compared to those territories, because people in general are very open to this idea, and in India, especially at the ground, they're very loving, regardless of their community, regardless of where they belong. So I think we experienced that firsthand. Second question, there when we started editing this film, it was about 11 hours long. As I said, we came down to 9 and then 2.5 and then finally 1.5. So there were a lot of portions that mentioned how they walked, how they physically went through this whole journey, the blisters that happened. There were, a lot of things there that we kind of had earlier on. But unfortunately, we had to omit it because what was happening was it was taking away from the focus of what they set out to do. So what we felt was, look, they've done the walk. They've walked this distance. It's a proven fact. I don't need to prove that. So we felt let's focus on what they set out to do, and how they do it. How they did it was something which is already there. So that was a conscious decision on our part. You're right. Maybe we could include some bits of it again. All screenings help us gain some perspective, really. As I said, this is your film more than it's my film. This film belongs to everybody. There's somebody at the back who has a question.
Hi, Akash Bhaiya. Congratulations.
Hi. Hey, Amal. Oh, guys, I have to introduce you to one of the cinematographers and still photographers of the walk. That's Amal sitting right there. He did all the stills of the walk. He's sitting amidst you guys. He's now in London.
Akash Bhaiya, I know there are a lot of footages you were left with, and you came up with a beautiful documentary. I'm just curious and wondering, you have any plan to make as series, like a web series, like season? I'm just curious about it.
I thought about that quite in the start when we had that long cut ready. It's very easy to make it into a series, but I felt personally as a filmmaker that you see the north to the south in 1.5 hours, the north to the south of India in 1.5 hours, and in that 1.5 hours you've walked 1.5 years. So I think just confining it to this medium particularly made a lot of sense to me as a filmmaker, because that was the experience I wanted to share. I wanted to make it as immersive. I wanted to make you feel the walk as immersively as you could for that 1.5 hours. So I think that was a conscious decision. But later on in the future, if somebody does want a series, we do have enough material to do it, though. I don't know if anybody wants to get a series done.
We all would be really grateful if you can do that. Like, I can speak for all of us. 11 hours. Believe me, I sat by a gentleman. He was crying. I was crying. I could see people wiping their tears while they were watching this. It was an amazing experience.
Shriyam sir said that there was a very interesting talk. What he mentioned in his video, he said that I spoke to the director and he said the walk was good because the film is good. I think it's the walk that you see in the film. It's not the film. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't know how to. It's the walk that is making you feel it. This took about 3 years to make the feature. I don't know how long it will take for the series.
Akash, thank you very much. So you melted us all today. So it left a very huge impact in the heart, and how much effort the entire crew has made, and how much effort Shyam himself has made. That's totally unbelievable. We have got no words to say. It's really melted us down. So thank you, very, very grateful to you all, and Shyam, humble pronouns to you all. Thank you from bottom of our hearts.
Thank you all for coming today and watching this on a rainy Sunday especially. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Question here.
Hi, Akash.
Hi.
Thank you so much for this film. I'm also quite moved by it and watching it together with all these people. When we spoke the first time, you told me there are, of course, many stories behind this journey. And I was wondering if you could pick one story, only one, to share with us as a human being or as a filmmaker. Which one would it be? Thank you.
So one story from the walk?
Yeah.
That resonates with me?
Like you told me, there are so many stories behind this walk. And I was wondering,
right.
Yeah.
Right. As a filmmaker, I think when we found this one shot of them walking in the rain, There was one shot of them walking in the rain where they are walking, and interestingly, I don't know if you guys noticed, but the camera pulls out and you see these raindrops in front of the windshield. So you're inside the car and they're outside. I think that was when we discovered that shot, it was like an Einstein moment for us, that we found something, which we have to put out there. That was something which really sticks to me when I think about the whole editing process. That one shot, I think, for me is one of my favorite shots from the walk and from the film, because it clearly shows you what they went through without saying much about it. A story from the walk, wow, that's huge, because you're talking 474 days. I think the first day by itself is something that will always be with me, because we just landed there with 3 cameras, just a few close friends, small cameras, and there was this huge crowd of like 3,000 people. Nobody knew how it's going to pan out. And just seeing that scale of people walking for this one cause, I think that will stick with me for a long time. The jungle, as I said, filming in that jungle will also stick with me for a long time. Going through that experience with them, being a part of the walk. So I consider the film crew, part of the walk only. So we're like walkers ourselves. So are you guys, right? Now that you've seen the film, you're walkers as well. You walk the whole journey. So as I said, this is your film as much as it's my film.
Thank you.
Oh, just one in the front here.
Okay.
Hi, Akash. Congratulations.
Hi. Thank you very much.
So you spoke about the amazing process of how you sort of constructed the arc from the footage after you had a chance to kind of look at all of it. But as it was, 400 days, were you kind of forming an arc as it was happening? And were you sort of taking notes? And did you have to go through quite a few iterations in the sense of like staying in the moment rather than coming up like not projecting an arc?
Yes. So as as filmmakers, when you start with an idea, it's never the same when it always translates out to the actual picture, right? So when we started off with the whole 474 days, there was an arc being written every single day. And when we got done with it, we realized that this is not going to work. So there was this complete process of us rediscovering ourselves and the art together after the whole photography or the principal photography was done, which is after the walk happened. We were making notes each day, oh, this is a great shot, this can be joined with this. But when you actually come to doing it, you just toss those notes out of the window. And it was a journey of discovery. I think that was our real walk that we did together with them, after the film, when we actually went into it. So yes, we did have a lot of ideas when we were starting out, but those ideas, I wouldn't say were completely shunned out. It did help us in getting us when you do a doc, it helped us in understanding what we need to film the next day or what we need to film while what is happening. We followed a couple of characters. We followed, some people during the walk. We followed Shriyan. But eventually we realized that, this is more of a much, much bigger a story than what we were filming day to day. What happens is day to day, you're seeing something. Tomorrow's a new day, and you're again getting something new. So it was very organic. This particular film was extremely organic.
Thank you so much. I mean, the documentary was amazing and really amazing to hear you talk about it as well. So
happy, so glad to have been a part of this. Thank you, guys.
Absolute pleasure. And as a last thing, you'd mentioned before just how many languages and dialects you'd had to encounter along the way, which is never occurred.
Right. India, I think, if I'm not, has multiple languages and dialects which are actively spoken across, districts and towns. I think if you cross 20 kilometers, the dialect changes. This particular film we had Tamil, we had Malayalam, we had Kannada. Then when we went into Maharashtra, we had Marathi. then Gujarati, then the central India generally speaks Hindi. And then again, when we came to Haryana and Punjab, the dialects change again to Haryanvi and Punjab. So it, but of course, being from India, we knew about it, but encountering it face to face when you are on the ground, meeting the people, filming them, asking them for bites, I think it was a discovery for us. I told you, it was learning for us to see this diversity who still lives so unitedly in the country. Yeah. It was a great learning. I think if you ask anybody who was a part of the walk, they'll say they've changed, for a lifetime. There's been a change, a permanent change for a lifetime.
Wonderful. Well, one final question.
Last question.
Okay.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Any chance Shriyam is planning to do another walk?
I don't. You'll have to ask him. He had mentioned. I think after this particular walk, he did quite a few walks across Europe in multiple cities. I'm not sure if he's planning to do a longer walk like this, but I think he'd be the best one to answer that.
And we will do that next week.
Yeah, next week, exactly. Next week, he's agreed to come on with the call. So if you guys wish to come, or if you have any questions for him, please.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Akash. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Matthew.
Thank you. And of course, you are very welcome to come and visit us at the Garden Cinema, we hope.
I would love to. Maybe next time I could be there. I would love to be there with you guys. It's just that I've just come back from Europe, so I couldn't make the trip. But next time, maybe definitely would love to be there with you guys. Thank you very much to all of you for coming. And thank you to the Garden Cinema for hosting this event. Really.
Wonderful.
Thank you all.
Thanks to Shriyam, and thanks to all of the organizers here. And I must give a final thanks to Millie, our very wonderful assistant here, Joe for filming, and finally Marzia, who has gone to such great lengths to make this happen. So thank you. All right. Thank you very much, everyone.